Welcome once again to this episode of Sam, Crime Story. I hope everyone in your family is doing well and taking care of themselves and their loved ones. This story takes us to November 14th in Gujarat, near the city of Surat, in a district called Valsad. Within this district lies a railway station named Udvada. It was the evening of November 14th. A 19-year-old second-year student, a girl, was returning home after finishing her tuition class. Incidentally, the route from her tuition center to her home required her to cross the railway tracks. She used to take tuitions at her coaching center, and her house was located barely 200 meters away from Udvada railway station, close to a railway crossing. This route was part of her daily routine. She would cross the railway tracks, pass the railway crossing, and then reach her house. However, there was a particular stretch about 100 meters from the station, a section with a slight dip where the trees were dense and overgrown. On the evening of November 14th, the girl left her coaching center as usual and was on her way home. But this time, she never reached home. Her routine was so regular that she would typically arrive home within a certain time frame. But that evening, when the clock ticked past 10 minutes, then 30, and eventually an hour, she still hadn't arrived. A few hours passed, and the girl still hadn't reached home. Her family grew worried, but they knew the route she always took between her coaching center and home. Determined to find her, the entire family set out, retracing her path step by step, carefully examining every detail along the way. As they approached a deserted spot about 100 meters before Udvada railway station, near the railway tracks, they noticed a girl lying on the ground. Rushing closer to investigate, they saw it was their own daughter. The way her body was lying there, it was clear at first glance that she had been assaulted, as she was not clothed, and she had already passed away. Seeing this, her family broke down, screaming and crying uncontrollably. By then, some passers-by in the area gathered at the spot, and soon the railway police force arrived. The police were informed, and they reached the scene to begin their investigation. Near the girl's body, they found her bag, which contained her books. Alongside it, they discovered two other items: a white sweatshirt and a backpack. The family informed the police that neither the white sweatshirt nor the backpack belonged to the girl. The police then opened the backpack to examine its contents. Inside, they found 3 jerseys, 2 pairs of half pants, and a mobile charger. By looking at the clothes in the backpack, it became quite evident that the owner of the bag, likely the killer and rapist, was not from the town. He appeared to be an outsider, possibly someone traveling through the area, likely arriving and leaving by train. Acting quickly, the police dispatched a team to the nearby Udvada police station to begin further investigations. The first blow to the investigation comes when it is discovered that there are no CCTV cameras at the Udvada railway station. The police are deeply disappointed. However, by looking at the bag and the clothes, it is clear that the person responsible is a traveler, someone who is on a journey. With no CCTV footage to help, the police are left with few clues. Meanwhile, the body is taken for a post-mortem at the district hospital in Surat. The report comes back, revealing that before her death, or the murder, the girl had been assaulted. Now the police intensify their search for the killer. With no CCTV cameras, only a backpack and a sweatshirt to work with, finding the killer was not going to be easy. The police then decided to explore nearby stations since there were no cameras at the Udvada station itself. In a hurry, several police teams were assigned to search the neighboring stations. Their efforts paid off when they discovered that the station just before Udvada had CCTV cameras installed. Upon checking the footage from that camera and reviewing the timing, the police found an individual captured on the video. The person appeared on the CCTV footage. While the police couldn't make out his face, they were stunned to see that he was wearing the exact same white sweatshirt and carrying the same black backpack that had been found at the scene. Given that the stations before and after Udvada were checked, and this person was wearing the same clothes and carrying the same bag found on the victim, it became clear that he was likely the one involved in the crime. The police then decided to examine the CCTV footage more closely. In the footage, it was noticeable that the person was walking with a slight limp. It appeared that his left leg was possibly injured. This new clue gave the police a sense of hope, They decided to start searching for him. The railway police were notified, and Gujarat police formed 10 teams. They instructed the teams to check every station along the route to determine where he had boarded or disembarked, so they could trace his movements. As the days passed, they eventually found that he had been spotted at Vapi station. At Vapi, it was observed that he was boarding a train heading toward Mumbai's Bandra. This led the police to conclude that he was likely heading toward Mumbai. The police teams reached Bandra, Mumbai, but by the time they reviewed the footage, much time had already passed. Catching him on a moving train seemed nearly impossible, but at least they had his location. He had traveled from Udvada to Vapi, and then from Vapi to Bandra in Mumbai, all tracked through the CCTV cameras. After that, however, he vanished from the cameras. Now, there were no CCTV cameras to help, and the killer seemed to have disappeared without a trace. The police were left with no leads. This could be the first case involving a disabled serial killer. Meanwhile, the Gujarat police made another attempt to gather more information about the suspect. First, they took a printout of the face captured in the CCTV footage and checked the databases of all the jails in Gujarat. They tried to find out if any recent inmate matched this description. There was no match for his face in any of the jails in Gujarat, and unfortunately, there was no record of him being an inmate or recently released. Days were passing with no success. The police then decided to check the national database of jails across different states in the country. They sent the picture to every state, asking if anyone had seen such an inmate. As the search went on across different states, they faced repeated failures. However, they eventually found a breakthrough. In the Jodhpur jail in Rajasthan, the face of an inmate perfectly matched the one from the CCTV footage. It was discovered that the same person had been released on bail earlier that year in May. The case was related to truck theft. Once the match was made, the jail records revealed more information. It was discovered that his name was Rahul Jat, and he was from Rohtak, Haryana. The police then went to Rohtak, hoping to find him, but once again, they faced disappointment. They learned that Rahul had been thrown out of his home a long time ago by his mother and brother because he was a bad character. He was involved in gang activities, had several theft charges against him, and had been to jail multiple times. Neighbors would taunt his family because of him, so his parents essentially disowned him, and since then, he never returned home. The family had no idea about his whereabouts. The name was known, but the location remained a mystery. Despite this, the police continued their efforts to track him down. They set up a network of informants and also kept a close watch on Bandra in Mumbai, where he had last been captured on camera. Time was running out. 10 days had passed since the girl's body was found on November 14th, and now it was November 24th. Suddenly, the police chief of Valsad was in his office when the phone rang. It was an informant who worked as a hawker at Bandra railway station. Hawkers are those who sell goods at shops or on the streets. The call came from one such hawker, and the reason for the call was that the Valsad police had shared the image of the killer named Rahul, which was captured from the CCTV footage, with all the railway stations from Gujarat to Mumbai. The police had instructed them to inform if they spotted this person at any station. The hawker at Bandra railway station, as well as the railway police, had the same image. When the hawker called, he mentioned that he had just seen the person in the picture, and he was walking in the same limp as described. The hawker provided the police chief with this information, confirming that the suspect was indeed at Bandra. The hawker mentioned that the suspect was on a train heading to Bhuj. This information was enough, but by the time the hawker called, the train had already left Bandra. The RPF was alerted, and a police team was deployed. One team was already stationed in Vapi, as the train was passing through there. The Vapi police team was informed and told to look for the suspect on the train. When the train arrived at Vapi, the police officers, in plain clothes, swiftly boarded the train. They didn't have to put up much effort. The suspect was sitting on a seat, and they quickly apprehended him. The killer they had been searching for over the past 10 days was finally found. They had checked 5,000 CCTV cameras, contacted police teams from 4 states, and reached out to jails across the country. Now they had him. The Valsad police brought Rahul back with them and began their interrogation. The police believed they had solved a case of rape and murder. But as soon as the questioning started and Rahul began telling his story, the police realized by the time he finished that the person they had caught was not just a criminal involved in rape and murder. They hadn't caught just any killer, but a serial killer, one who had committed 5 murders, all within the span of a month. The police were shocked when they heard his story. He began by telling his entire story, starting with the case from November 14th, when the second-year student's body was found near the Udvada railway station in Valsad. Rahul revealed that on November 14th, he had come to Valsad, where he worked at a hotel for a few days. Afterward, he left, leaving some money unpaid. He came back to collect the money and he then returned to the Udvada station, where he needed to catch a train to Mumbai. Since there was some time before the train arrived, he began walking around the platform. As he reached the farthest end of the platform, he saw the same girl returning after her tuition. It was quiet, with no one around, and it was evening by then. He followed her for about 100 meters, staying cautious and waiting for the right moment. After 100 meters, he found a secluded spot near the railway tracks, surrounded by trees with no one else around. He saw an opportunity, and while following the girl, she had no suspicion of him, as many people pass by. In the quiet, he seized the moment, grabbed her, covered her mouth, threatened her, and then assaulted her. Afterward, he strangled her. Once the deed was done, he felt thirsty. Having already taken off his sweatshirt during the assault, he left his backpack there. Now, in front of him, lay the lifeless body of the girl he had just murdered and assaulted. But now, he was thirsty. The station platform was about 100 meters away, and he saw that there was no one around, so no one would notice the body. Leaving his backpack and sweatshirt behind, he wrapped himself with just a cloth and wore a vest underneath. He went back to the platform, where he bought a juice packet and a milk packet, drank them, and then returned with the intention of assaulting the lifeless body again. However, as he arrived, he saw that there was a crowd gathered at the spot. Meanwhile, the girl hadn't returned home on time, and her family became worried. She was never late, but that day she was about 2 to 2.5 hours late, which made her family worried. They then set out to find her. They knew her route from home to the coaching center and that she passed by the railway track. By coincidence, they came across the body, and the family found her. The crowd gathered, and the police arrived. Seeing the crowd from a distance, he realized that the truth had been uncovered. He turned back, left his backpack and sweatshirt on the platform, boarded the next train, and left. But that backpack and sweatshirt became crucial evidence in catching him. If he hadn't left those 2 items behind that day, the CCTV cameras at the station wouldn't have captured anything. And even if he was caught on camera at any other station, there would have been no way to identify him as the killer or rapist. There was no other way to recognize him, no witnesses, and no one had seen his face. That's why, when his backpack and sweatshirt appeared on another station's CCTV footage, with the same items on his shoulders, it became clear that this was the same person. He then told his story, explaining that after that, he went to Vapi, then to Mumbai, to Bandra, and from there to Howrah. He then said that 5 days after the murder on November 14th, on November 19th, he raped and murdered another woman in Howrah. Her body was also found in a train compartment. After that, he left Howrah and went to Andhra Pradesh, where he boarded a train at a railway station and killed another woman in one of the coaches. He then moved on to Secunderabad. At the railway station, he also raped and murdered another woman on a train coming from Pune to Kanyakumari. He said that his first murder took place on October 20th, the second on October 25th, followed by a gap. On November 14th, he committed the murder in Valsad, which was the only one of the 5 that wasn't in a railway coach but outside. After that, he killed again on November 19th and then on November 23rd, bringing the total to 5 murders. When the police asked him why he committed these 5 murders, his response to that question was, the big question was why he committed 4 out of these 5 murders in Indian Railways compartments that were reserved for disabled individuals. In our trains, there is usually a coach reserved for people with physical disabilities. The murder he committed in Howrah was in a compartment reserved for disabled passengers. The one in Andhra was also in a reserved compartment. Similarly, the one in Secunderabad was in a reserved compartment, and the fourth murder was also in a reserved compartment. Moreover, all four of these victims were women with disabilities. Now, since the reserved compartments are obviously meant for individuals with disabilities, it was clear that the women in those compartments were disabled. The police were curious about the motive behind murdering 4 disabled women in reserved compartments of Indian railways. When they questioned him, he shared his story, which revealed the answers to their questions. Rahul was originally from Haryana, specifically from the Rohtak district. When he was a child, his father passed away. Shortly after, he contracted polio, which left his left leg impaired and caused him to limp while walking. He was admitted to school, but the other children used to tease him because of his limp. They mocked him relentlessly. Over time, this started to affect him deeply. Slowly, he managed to continue his studies, and he had a dream. He wanted to become a truck driver. Trucks fascinated him, and just the sight of them brought him joy. He believed that one day he would drive a truck. However, because he had polio and a disabled leg, no one gave him the chance to become a truck driver. Nobody allowed him to come near trucks. This rejection hurt him deeply. It was then that he committed his first crime. He said, "The trucks I wanted to drive, they wouldn't let me, so I started stealing trucks." He stole 12 trucks from different places, including Delhi, Haryana, Rajasthan, and Uttar Pradesh. He would steal the trucks, sell their goods, and abandon the trucks somewhere else. Because of these thefts, he was caught several times and sent to jail. He would get arrested for truck theft, serve time in jail, and then come out on bail. This cycle of going to jail and getting released on bail continued for years. The last time he was in Jodhpur jail, it was for truck theft, and earlier this year in May, he was released on bail. By that time, his family had already disowned him. After being released, having been in jail so many times, he had come into contact with many other criminals. He had essentially become a professional criminal. After his release, memories of his childhood started haunting him again. The thought that he was disabled, that one of his legs didn't work properly, how children used to mock him. Even now, he felt that people must still laugh at him when they see him. This thought consumed him deeply, and he became increasingly bitter. One day, he noticed the reserved bogies for the disabled. These bogies often have a lot of people, but sometimes there is only one. Being disabled himself, he thought, he would board the coach, and wherever he found a woman, he would take out all his suppressed anger and frustration on her. For the first time, on October 20th, he unleashed his rage on a woman in the reserved coach. He raped her and then killed her before fleeing. Afterward, he realized how easy it was. Not only did he commit the crime, but he also wasn't caught. Emboldened by this, he started moving from one state to another, never repeating his crimes in the same state. This became his pattern, committing crimes in different states without leaving a trace. On November 14th, when he committed the crime in Valsad, Gujarat, it was the first incident he carried out outside the railway bogies near the railway tracks. And it was this incident that eventually led to his capture because, if it weren't for his bag and sweatshirt, he might never have been caught. He committed 4 murders and rapes in the reserved coaches meant for the handicapped, but no one ever suspected him. Different police forces investigated the cases in different ways, but for the first time, he stepped out of the train and committed a crime outside, which ultimately led to his capture. He was apprehended on November 24th, and now the police are interrogating him. They are still trying to understand why a disabled man would target women like himself. Disabled women, inside Indian trains, committing such heinous acts of rape and murder, was still unclear, and perhaps the police have yet to find the right answer to this question. The hope is that, with him in custody, the answers to these questions will emerge before his police custody ends. However, it is shocking to realize that even women in moving trains are not safe, as 4 murders had already been committed. If the incident in Valsad hadn't occurred, who knows how many more victims this serial killer would have claimed. Thankfully, He was caught in time.